All right, today we're diving into something wild. A really radical proposal that could totally flip the script on global finance. It's being called the Genius Act. And get this, it's all about America giving private companies a license to print money.
Okay, let's just get right to it, because this is the big question, right? It sounds completely nuts. Why on earth would any country, let alone the United States, hand over one of its most basic powers, creating money, to a bunch of private companies? I mean, doesn't that sound like a recipe for absolute chaos?
Well, here's the crazy part. To really get this move, you have to realize it's not some brand new, out-of-the-blue idea. It's more like waking up a dormant gene, something deep in America's financial DNA. We actually have to go way back to the country's early days.
We're talking about what's known as the free banking era. You know, for a few decades back in the 1800s, it wasn't just the government making money. Pretty much any group that could scrape together the capital could start their own bank and print their own private money, their own banknotes, as long as they had assets like state bonds to back it up. It was a super decentralized and yet, frankly, a pretty messy system.
Just imagine the scene. You've got literally thousands of different kinds of banknotes floating around. If you're a merchant, how do you know what's real? Well, they had to rely on these special guides, these banknote reporters, just to tell the good cash from the fake stuff, printed by so-called wildcat banks that might just disappear overnight. It was a mess for sure, but it was also this incredible hotbed of financial creativity.
So this whole era of private money kicks off in 1837 and runs all the way until 1863, when the National Bank Act starts to standardize things. But the final nail in the coffin? That came in 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act. That's what created the centralized system we all know today, and it basically sealed away that institutional gene of private money, well, until now.
Okay, so if this is an old idea, why dig it up now? Because the modern US dollar, for all of its power, is actually in a pretty tight spot. You could say it's walking a very, very narrow and dangerous tightrope.
See, for decades now, America has had this incredible advantage, what economists call the exorbitant privilege. Since the dollar is the world's go-to currency, the US can essentially just print paper money and trade it for real stuff, cars, oil, electronics from other countries. We get real goods and they get paper. It's been called the best deal in economic history. But that privilege? It's now facing a two-front war. First, there's the geopolitical threat. The massive US national debt is making other countries pretty nervous. So they're slowly, but surely, stockpiling gold and figuring out ways to trade with each other without using the dollar. At the exact same time, there's this technological threat that's just exploded onto the scene. An entire parallel financial system built on crypto, with a core belief in decentralization, something totally outside of any government's control.
In this crypto world, it's fueled by this powerful flywheel effect. It goes like this. Any weakness in the old system, say inflation or a bank going under, it shakes people's trust. So they look for alternatives. That pushes money and smart people into the crypto world. That investment makes the crypto tech better and easier for everyone to use. And that, of course, brings in even more people, which puts even more pressure back on the old system. You see? It just keeps spinning, faster and faster.
So, what do you do when you're facing a political threat on one side and a technological revolution on the other? Well, this is where the Genius Act comes in. It's a pragmatic, you could even say cold-blooded, solution to this massive problem.
And the strategy itself is just beautiful in its simplicity. Instead of trying to fight or ban this disruptive energy coming from crypto, the idea is to embrace it, or more accurately, to channel it. The plan is to build a brand new, regulated pipeline for all that energy and point it in a direction that helps the US. And the main target? The fastest growing part of crypto, stablecoins. Those digital tokens that are supposed to always be worth exactly $1.
Now, the Genius Act isn't just a simple policy tweak, it's a strategy. It has this really clever three-part goal that's all about reimagining American financial power for a new era. So let's break it down.
First up, and this is probably the most brilliant part of the whole plan, the strategy aims to secure the very foundation of America's power.
its ability to pay its own bills.
The act would basically say, if you're a private company and you want to issue a new digital dollar, you have to back it up 100% with U.S. Treasury bonds. The result is just stunning. For every new digital dollar that gets created, a dollar of U.S. debt has to be bought and locked away. This instantly creates a huge structural and, get this, a totally apolitical new buyer for U.S. debt, which perfectly plugs the gap being left by foreign governments.
Okay, so that's goal number 1, secure the funding. Goal number 2 is all about control. We're talking a massive upgrade in regulatory power.
Right now, when the U.S. wants to use financial sanctions, it relies on the SWIFT network. That's the messaging system for banks. It's powerful, but it's also kind of old, slow, and clunky. Now picture this, a regulated stablecoin network under U.S. law. It would be a quantum leap. It would give regulators the power to watch, to track, and even to freeze transactions in real time with a level of surgical precision that is just, it's impossible with the tools they have today.
The third goal is maybe the most subtle of all, but it could be the real checkmate move. It's about completely changing the game itself.
See, this move brilliantly sidesteps that whole messy philosophical fight. You know, the decentralized crypto versus centralized government debate. Instead, it completely reframes the competition. It changes the question from if to whose. The new global competition becomes whose regulated digital dollar is the fastest, the safest, the most useful. And that is a game the U.S., with its huge tech companies and deep financial markets, is set up to absolutely dominate.
So when you put all the pieces together, securing the debt, upgrading control, and reframing the competition, you start to see that the Genius Act isn't just another law. The best way to think about it is as a Trojan horse.
It's a strategy that's disguised as an embrace of futuristic technology. It looks like a gift, but it's actually a revolutionary weapon designed to reinforce and upgrade American power for the next century. It's being carefully packaged and pushed right through the gates of the walled city of global finance. And it's meant to change the entire system from the inside out.
And that, of course, brings us to the biggest question of all. Once this horse is inside the gates, what actually happens? What's inside it? How does it start to take apart the world of banking and payments and assets as we know it today? Well, that is the next part of this incredible story.